What if you had the legal right to kill someone just for insulting you? In feudal Japan, that wasn't a fantasy, it was real. We're talking about the samurai, not just elite warriors with cool swords, but members of a brutal, complex social class. Behind the polished armor and honor codes lies a darker story, one filled with legal killings, violent traditions, and a dramatic downfall. If you think you know the samurai, think again. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the hidden side of history. Let's get into it. The samurai weren't just fighters. They were an upper class that served Japan's noble lords for centuries. They trained from childhood in martial arts, strategy, and philosophy. But what really set them apart was their adherence to Bushido, the way of the warrior. Bushido demanded discipline, loyalty, and above all, honor. But honor, as we'll see, was sometimes used to justify terrifying acts. You still see samurai in pop culture, movies, video games, anime, but most of those portrayals skip the grim realities. Let's start with one of the most shocking laws they lived by. Kiri-sute Gomen, a license to kill. Samurai had the legal right to kill someone of lower status if they felt disrespected. The rule was called Kiri-sute Gomen, which roughly means authorization to cut and leave. It wasn't just theory, it happened. Two conditions made it legal. A witness had to confirm the offense. The killing had to be immediate. The idea was to allow self-defense in matters of honor. But the rule was vague. What counted as an insult, a glance, a misplaced word? Samurai could even use their own servants as witnesses. In practice, it gave them unchecked power over commoners and lower-ranked samurai. This law blurred the line between justice and murder. You've probably seen videos of modern samurai slicing bamboo or rolled mats to show off their technique. But historically, those cuts weren't made on practice targets. They were made on people. The practice was called Tameshigiri, sword testing. At first, yes, they used straw and bamboo. But in the Edo period, especially among the elite, there was a gruesome upgrade. Criminals, sometimes already dead, sometimes not, were used as test subjects. One samurai might request a sword test that involved cutting through multiple bodies stacked together. Some tests were done in public, others were private commissions. But either way, the sword wasn't the only thing being judged. The wielder was too. What happens when a samurai dishonors himself? He kills himself. Seppuku, or ritual suicide, was considered an honorable exit. It involved disemboweling oneself with a short blade. It was a painful, slow death, meant to show sincerity and courage. If done formally, it included wearing white robes, composing a final poem, having a second, called a kaishakunin, to behead you and end the suffering. Samurai used seppuku to avoid capture, protest decisions, or cleanse shame. It wasn't rare. In some periods, it was even expected. Can you imagine living in a society where suicide was a duty? The fallen samurai, Ronin. What if your master died or you were dismissed? You became a Ronin, a masterless samurai. Ronin literally means wave man, someone adrift with no anchor. They were often treated with suspicion. No master meant no purpose, no control. Many refused to become farmers or merchants. Some became mercenaries, others turned to crime. A few tried to maintain the Bushido code without a lord. You've probably heard of the 47 Ronin, the group that avenged their master's death, then committed seppuku together. Their story became a national legend. But not all Ronin were so noble. The Night Killers, Tsujigiri. This next part might sound like a horror movie. Tsujigiri translates to crossroads killing. A samurai gets a new sword or wants to test a new technique. So what does he do? He walks out at night and attacks the first person he sees. These weren't duels, they weren't fair, they were surprise killings, often against unarmed civilians. Some lords punished it harshly, others looked the other way. It wasn't common, but it happened enough that laws had to be created specifically to stop it. Even in a violent era, Tsujigiri was seen as excessive. Kabukimono, the wild ones. If you think samurai were always stoic and disciplined, meet the Kabukimono. In the late 1500s and early 1600s, some rogue samurai formed street gangs. They dressed in loud, colorful clothes. Some wore women's robes or painted their faces. Their swords had engraved designs. Their scabbards had tassels and ornaments. And they didn't just look wild, they acted it. Kabukimono were known for violence, robbery, and public fights. They challenged the idea of the honorable warrior. Some historians see them as a rebellion against the rigid codes of Bushido. Others see them as criminals with swords. Either way, they were a real part of samurai history. By the mid-1800s, Japan was changing fast. In 1867, Emperor Meiji came to power and started modernizing the country. This period is known as the Meiji Restoration. Japan adopted Western technologies, government structures, and military models. The samurai class stood in the way. The government began reducing samurai salaries, replacing them with bonds, banning sword carrying in public. By 1876, the samurai had no special privileges. Two-thirds lost their income. Some adapted, others resisted. In 1877, a former samurai named Saigo Takamori led a rebellion in Satsuma. He and 500 samurai faced 30,000 imperial troops armed with rifles and cannons. The Battle of Shiroyama was their last stand. Outnumbered and outgunned, the samurai charged with swords. Most were killed. Saigo was wounded. Some say he committed seppuku before the battle ended. This battle marked the death of the samurai as a force in Japan. Samurai are often remembered as honorable warriors, but their story is more complex, full of violence, contradictions, and change. They lived by a code, but some bent it. They defended order, but some created chaos. They shaped Japan's history, then vanished as the world moved on. So here's a question. Would you admire the samurai more if you knew the whole truth, or less? Let us know in the comments. If you learned something new, hit like and share this video. Subscribe for more deep dives into the untold parts of history. Thanks for watching. See you next time.